A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
This is Andrew McLennan. Christian education in Australia has always been under threat, but the threat seems to be looming larger than ever, with pressure being mounted through media, through certain sections of government, to disband the exemptions and the privileges and the opportunities afforded to Christian education across Australia. Well, thankfully, there are organisations that are pushing back against this by raising awareness and encouraging all of us as believers to be mobilised to retain the rights and the exemptions that we've taken for granted for so long. And one of those people is Darryl Budge, the WA Family Voice Australia Director, and he joins us from Western Australia now. Darryl, welcome.
Thank you, Andrew. It's great to be here with you.
It's good to have you. We've got quite a growing audience in WA, so it's always good when we speak to someone on the ground there in Western Australia. Tell us what is going on in the context of Christian education in Western Australia right now.
Yes, well, we have a Labor government that's obviously very dominant in Parliament here. It has vastly the numbers, so it has the power to do a lot of changes in Parliament. Thankfully, it's kind of signalled that it's not going to change the Equal Opportunity Act at this stage in WA legislation, but it is promising to change things. And what that will change, what they're promising to change is after the next election, which will be March next year, they're promising to change and remove exemptions from the Equal Opportunity Act for Christian schools and faith-based schools in general, and that means all educational institutions. So those exemptions apply to the staff and the hiring and firing decisions and discipline of staff and things like that are essential to retain the Christian character and the values-based formation of students in each of those schools across WA. And those kinds of changes have happened in other states. We're thankful we have still those exemptions right now, but the Labor government is kind of floating to change that. Now, what has actually happened just this past week on Friday, it was reported in the West Australian that a Labor MP in Bassendean actually presented an opinion piece in the West Australian platforming that accusing Christian schools of supposedly being transphobic and homophobic and making all these assertions and things like that, and saying that schools are suppressing people and hurting children just for presenting a Christian character and a formation of what is the biblical lifestyle, and that they should remove these exemptions for staff hiring decisions. And so he's kind of trying to pressure his own government to move. So that's the environment that we're in right now in WA, and I put out a media release and just explained why this is not true at all, and hopefully we get the press would respond in that in a positive way, but also we as Christians, obviously, we can talk to politicians and represent to them to say, look, this is not true at all. This is what my experience of Christian schooling is, and this is what it actually is about.
Okay, so for anyone that doesn't know some of the meaning behind these phrases you're using, what is the Equal Opportunity Act? Right,
so that's an act that presents discrimination law across Western Australia. So for all the employees and employers, it controls what you're allowed to do in terms of hiring and discipline decisions of staff across any organisation. So it covers all organisations and all companies, and there are exemptions written into that legislation as applies to at the national level, the Sex Discrimination Act and a few other attendant acts like that. But there are some exemptions put in there for educational institutions that are religious. That was put in there way back in 1984 when it was first moved, and it's had small amendments over time. So that's the environment which we live. It's not a positive freedom for Christian institutions and Christian schools. It's kind of a negative freedom that they're given an exemption from what the government sees as good and right.
Yeah, which just is obviously equal opportunity for all. In other words, if you are transgender or you're homosexual or any of those other descriptions that people use for different forms of sexuality, that you have an equal opportunity to work anywhere that you want to work, regardless of the values or the principles of an organisation or an institution that you want to work at.
That's right, yes. So there's a whole long list of supposed identities, and of course, some of those somebody can't change. You can't change your age, you can't change your sex. Those things are obviously fixed, and obviously those are appropriate, that those should be kind of there in the law. But there are a lot of things, of course, that we as people, we change, we're flexible. And so the idea of rooting into law, the idea that this is an unchangeable part about somebody is obviously a religious assertion that you're all born this way and you're always going to be this way. And so the idea of a Christian group saying that is a behaviour that is chosen, and we have chosen under a biblical principle that this is not appropriate for our organisation and this is not the way of God that we want to uphold, then the government sees itself as there's the socialist kind of mindset that sees itself as the one that should come in with a supposedly superior religious belief.
Yeah. And so at the moment there are exemptions, and you've got an MP in WA who's pushing hard to pressure the government to remove those exemptions from Christian institutions, from Christian schools and from Bible college. Is there any indication that this particular MP is getting traction with his campaign?
At this stage, I don't think so. I think that they're waiting on what the national government will do. So the Australian Law Reform Commission has mooted a bunch of changes in the National Sex Discrimination Act. So it sounds to me like the WA government is waiting until that review is complete, and that's what Christian schools in WA and across the country are obviously campaigning with the national government on, and saying we want to keep and retain those things, because whatever is set in the national law then is a superior law and will alter what applies at a state level. So the national law is superior to the state law. So that's the reason why the WA government is delaying its decision, part of the reason that it's delaying its decision.
Yeah, they're waiting for the feds. And is there any indication that the Australian federal government is going to pass those laws, or are they also sitting on their hands sort of waiting to see?
Well, it sounds to me like they sound out the community. So they kind of want the Law Reform Commission to sound out and get the people's response to it. And obviously, there's been a lot of meetings from lots of organisations, not just ourselves, but all the Christian school associations have all met with MPs and represented to them. And it's, obviously they're listening and responding. It sounds to me like some of those mentioned at the national level regards to students' decisions and stuff like that, they have been seen as inappropriate and they're going to be removed. Across a lot of bodies are kind of agreeing that we're not wanting to say to a student that you must think this certain way. All we're doing is talking about staffing decisions. So there are some things that are going to be changing in the Sex Discrimination Act, but there's obviously, we as Christians we want to educate our children according to the principles that we as parents have. So we should have the right at a fundamental level, at an international rights level, to be able to say what happens to my child and how they're taught. Yeah.
And so, it sounds like the guys on the hill when Nehemiah went back to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Remember the enemies of Israel were on the hill just yelling things out and threatening them, intimidating them and trying to stop them. And there's some noise now in the media about this, but what is your message as the Western Australia Family Voice Australia Director? What is your message to Christians in WA now? What should we all be doing about this to be on the front foot?
So first of all, we should be presenting our views to government. So we have a bunch of campaigns on defending the rights of Christian schools on our website, familyvoice.org.au, that you can write to your particular MP and actually get their details, and think about arranging a personal meeting with them as well to actually talk about what we as Christians and as Christian parents believe about what schooling is about.
Yeah. I want to slow that down. Let's slow that down. So on your website, this is a great idea. familyvoice.org.au. That's your website, familyvoice.org.au. You've actually got links on there to help people contact members of their government, their local government representative, and actually have meetings and discuss this, and also send them emails and letters.
That's correct, yes.
That is a great initiative. Really good. familyvoice.org.au. And what's the next step after that?
Yeah, so in terms of in those discussions, there's some pointers I could suggest in discussions with MPs. Talk about the fact that Christians see education as a mind, body, spirit, whole of person. So what a teacher says and does and the lifestyle that they live is obviously what parents are wanting to be able to know, that the teachers at their school have the same kind of beliefs and values as the parents do at home. And so it's this whole of person education at a school. The other thing is, of course, we have better outcomes in many faith-based schools, that it's been shown in research, like Carter's research back in 2022, that students who go to a Christian school are more likely to get married and to remain married, and there's obviously some economic benefits to that for the whole of society. So, and talk about that we're more likely volunteer to help society because of the values that are taught in a Christian school, and obviously more likely to join up and participate in institutions and the political parties, according to Carter's research from 2022. So there's a clear benefit not only to people who don't even accept a biblical worldview, that it would see that Christian schooling is benefit to the whole of Australia, and that we are carers and givers, and we want to see a better Australia. And so Christian schooling has benefits for all.
Well, yeah, and if you study the history of the Western world, I think so many of the major positive changes were brought about by Christians, weren't they? And even the ideas that have really shaped our society in a good way.
Yeah, that's right. And for Christians, we want to care for those who are lonely and vulnerable. We want to provide what is good. Now, there's another website that my good friends of mine, so 3 Christian associations actually come together and organised a campaign website where people actually contribute their positive story of Christian education. That website is mychristianschool.au, and you actually put in your story as a student or as a staff member, and that will be used in various positive campaigns to represent why Christian schooling is good for society. And you can read some more of this data that I've talked about today on that website as well. So it's just a really good informative thing. So they're looking to build a bigger campaign list for the things that they want to do through Christian schooling. So that is also a beneficial website for many to get on board. Excellent.
So that's mychristianschool.au. And of course, your website is familyvoice.org.au. Encourage everyone, especially those in Western Australia, to go to familyvoice.org.au and engage with their local government or their state government or even their federal government representative in their area and really push back against these attempts to strip away our freedoms and our opportunities in Christian schools and Bible colleges. But Darryl, I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and I just hope and pray that many of our listeners get on board on this pushback against these attempts to strip away the freedoms that us Christians have taken for granted for a long time.
Indeed, yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.